right, everybody, welcome to KC Happy Hour episode number 68. After a week off, we are back to start. The short off season means basically it's a preseason for 2023. It's still a little bit of a wrap up for everybody from 2022, but it gave at least a gap week we were able to take to kind of let some more stuff develop to talk about on the show here tonight. We got a cool show for everybody. We've got a loaded shifter lineup that'll be coming. We're going to change the format a little bit. We'll introduce our main guest of honor here tonight, TJ Koyen, here in just a second, and kind of give you guys a little background on him for those that haven't gotten to know TJ or know his background in the sport and what he's been up to recently, because I think he's a guy that has some really interesting takes that we'll have on the show, hopefully a lot more after tonight as well, and he'll help me dive into the news. So we'll start off just kind of bringing him in, letting you guys know a little bit of who he is, and then we'll do our first commercial break. We'll come back after that. We'll go into all the news and stuff like that that's kind of come up over the last little 2-week span that we've had and some noteworthy stuff from there. And then the final segment of the show is when we'll bring all the superstars that we've got lined up as well. Kyle Wick, Danny Formal, and AJ Myers will join us at the end of the show for the last half hour to hour or so. Last time those guys were on here, Danny and AJ specifically, they called everybody out, said everyone was scared to go to shifter. And now, a year later, not even really, about 8 months later, the class has gotten more hype than I feel like it's had in a couple years. So I'd love to hear their thoughts on that. And then talk 2023. Now with multiple series adding the class, it kind of gives it a little more room and a few more places to run. So without further ado, TJ, welcome to the show for your first ever time, buddy. Thanks for making time to join me here tonight, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So I guess we should go ahead and start. I'm trying to think back of the first time you and I had our first time you and I met. It probably was that KA season, I think at USPK. Probably it was Yamaha the year before.
Yeah, I think
Senior.
probably at Mooresville or something at the USPK. Race there. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was like I think one of like two or I think I only did that race nationally that year, the 2015 season. That was like probably one of my lighter seasons I ran in the rain.
Yeah,
The white helmet that nobody knew who I was, but
yeah,
you were the veteran going back to the roots of 100cc racing that year, right?
yeah. Definitely that year I needed a little bit of a return to like figure out how to drive again. So I decided to run Yamaha that year. And I think it worked, but it was a lot of fun. Yamaha's such a good class. I kind of miss it.
Yeah, well, that'll be one of the topics we'll have tonight, obviously. Before we get into later of that, TJ, your background in the sport spans quite a bit of time. So what was your first kind of experiences when you first got in? Had your dad been doing stuff, anything racing related before?
So I started karting in 2002. And no, my dad had not really been involved in racing or anything. But my mom was a race fan when her and my dad first started dating. So that's how he got into racing. But they never raced. They were just fans. And then eventually, once we figured out there was a track nearby, my dad was like, "Oh, we should go down and watch." We watched a little bit. Club races at Dousman, Wisconsin, a Badger Kart Club. And he really wanted me to get started at kid kart level. And then my mom kind of held him off until I was 11 years old or so. And then we jumped in at what would be considered the cadet level now, just doing club racing there. And then from there, we ran club racing for a few years, doing stuff like Yamaha, KPV, HPV. And then we started to do regional racing probably around 04, 05. And right around that same time, kind of started to dabble in the national stuff. And then basically from like 08 until 2018 was my last full season that I've run, was basically all just national stuff with some regional stuff sprinkled in. And I've kind of driven everything that you can drive in like single speeds karts, Yamaha, like I said, Yamaha, KPV, Comet. I think I've drove every tag engine when it was mixed tag. And the most recent stuff has been X30 and KA. And then after 2018, I got married and I started having kids. And now I'm lucky to get out to the track when I can. And I've done 3 races in the past 2 or 3 years, I think, total. And it's it's kind of tough to be at the racetrack and not be racing, but fortunately, I've been able to stay involved, like at least on the karting side, being at the track doing coaching and data and all kinds of other stuff. So I still feel like I'm getting my fill. I'm pretty immersed in it still. I kind of know what's going on. So um, yeah, that's still fun. It's almost as fulfilling as driving, but it's not quite as fulfilling as driving.
Right. No, it's like a cool feeling getting back there, and then as soon as like the first race that you wanted to be in, you watch on track, and then the bug hits again, right? Then you wanted to get back out there.
Yeah, I got to be honest. Ever since Kart Chasers started showing the races, I can't even watch it sometimes because I'm just like, man, I should be out there. But and then I come back and do my couple races, and I go, maybe I shouldn't be out there. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it's tough to just watch on TV. So it's nice when I can get to the track and be involved in some way and coach and do all that stuff.
So 5 to 11, that's a pretty decent gap from that period, from when your dad almost got you in kid karts to when you finally got in cadet. What were you doing then? Were you playing other sports? Were you banging on parents' door to ask them to buy you a kart?
No, not really. As you know, I'm not a big guy, and I've never been a big guy physically. Like, I was a little tiny kid. So sports, I mean, I played a little baseball and stuff, but for the most part, it was like pretty afraid I was going to get hurt out there. So I didn't do any sports really. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to do it, but I didn't really know anything about it. So I wasn't like begging for a go-kart or anything, but it was always in the back of our minds, like this would be something really fun to do. And it ended up being a great like family activity that we did for many, many years, and had a lot of benefits outside of just learning about racing and stuff, but like also as like a fun family, like relationship building activity too.
Right. See, that's different from mine because I also knew nothing about it and had no ties. And I've still got probably PowerPoints on one of my dad's old hard drives sitting around somewhere of like probably the worst sales pitch you could put together.
Yeah.
But some sales pitch to get into like quarter midgets or go-karts or some way. So that's funny. And then so what was then the spark, right? At 11, was it just they felt like you were big enough that you'd be all right out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, my parents were race fans. So, and I was obviously a big race fan too. I just didn't know, what the first step was necessarily. And I knew it was up to my parents to make the first step for me because I was 11. I wasn't as ambitious as you, apparently. I didn't have PowerPoints and all that stuff that I was making. But um, yeah, I don't know what, like, I guess my mom finally was like, yeah, I think it's fine now. I think he's old enough.
Yeah.
Um, I still think for, like talking to a lot of parents and stuff now that I'm coaching a lot of younger kids, I think there is some wariness about like putting a little tiny 5-year-old kid behind the wheel at that age, even though they're more than capable most of the time. And it's kind of amazing what little kids are capable of to do in the go-kart. But I can understand now from a parenting point of view why you might be hesitant to wait a little bit longer.
And then so when did the kind of art, had you always been on the artistic, side and in school or stuff like that, extracurricular? When did kind of the spark to go into helmet painting and then all design and artwork that you've done with Oktane Visual? Where did that kind of begin?
Yeah, I mean, I was always just drawing pictures, and that was kind of my thing when I was a kid, was being artistic or whatever. And then as I got into high school and figuring out what I wanted to do in my life, at that point, I realized it wasn't going to be a professional race car driver like I had always imagined. Um, so I was like, well, the art thing, that's kind of my second passion. So I ended up doing all kinds of artistic stuff in high school, taking all kinds of art classes. And then I went to college for graphic design. And kind of right around the time I went to college, I realized I was like, I don't really want to pay for helmet painting anymore. I think I could probably try doing it on my own. So I did my own helmet, and it didn't turn out great, but I was like, oh, this is like fun. And it kind of combines my two passions. So right around there is when I kind of started to dabble in it a little bit as kind of a hobby. And then I got a job at Trek Bicycle Company, which is pretty cool. I did graphic design there. I designed graphics for components, bicycles, all kinds of cool stuff there. And then eventually I was doing the helmet painting part-time on the side as a hobby. And it just kind of like took over all my free time. And I was doing the numbers in my head for almost a year while I was working 9 to 5. And I was like, I think I could quit this job and just do helmet painting. And that's what I did. I decided I would rather just, follow my own dream and paint helmets for a living. And I've been doing that now about, I think, full time about 8 years, and that's all I've done. So yeah, it was kind of cool to be able to combine those two passions of mine and still maintain a presence in the go-karting world. I was still racing full time at the time. So it was nice. I mean, every race was a business trip basically. So yeah, it worked out pretty good. And so far it's still working out. So that's pretty cool.
So, how old were you going back 8 years? I don't want to date you too bad, but when was the jump, and how many years did you spent working the 9 to 5 for Trek?
I only worked at Trek for, I don't know, 2.5 years. It wasn't a long time, but it was in that short amount of time. I was like, yeah, I can't be stuck behind this desk all day. And plus, I wanted to still race full time, nationally and stuff. So traveling all the time was, my bosses weren't always stoked about me being gone so much. So I was like, well, if I'm doing my own thing, I can leave whenever I want. So that would be, yeah, 8 years. I would have been 23, 24 years old at that time.
Yeah. Okay. So now, you go through that path. What are some of the takeaways you have if you reflect back on the 80 years? I've read some of your posts, and you do a pretty good job of kind of describing what it's been like to be on the inside of your own business in an industry like this, trying to avoid burnout, trying to manage time, trying to now make family time and everything like that. Where do you take away as like big lessons from, going through that process and now 8 years still into it?
I mean, the main thing that I've learned so far through these years has been like managing your work-life balance. It's not such a big deal when you're like a single guy and your main thing that you're doing is like going racing go-karts, hanging out with your buddies at the bar, whatever. Not such a big deal to manage that at that point. But fortunately for me, Octane has gotten successful enough where I have to turn down a bunch of work. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like losing my mind trying to get everything done all the time. So saying no to things has been the big lesson I've been trying to teach myself the past few years. Like, don't overwhelm yourself so much and sacrifice all the other stuff you could be doing in your life, the free time you have, just to get more work, because you don't need to just work yourself to death before you're 30. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on now. And I think, fortunately, the natural progression of maturing and becoming an adult, getting married and having kids kind of makes that happen on its own. Like I just can't, work as much as I used to, even if I wanted to. So, yeah, I would say the big lesson has been rolling back, that work-life balance a little bit.
And you've kind of also balanced that by adding even more, not only national coaching, but a lot of local coaching now than the
Yeah.
last time I think I talked with you, right? That you've been in that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Where's your balance on both of those going back and forth, like percentage almost of how much time you spend on either or?
Yeah. So one of the toughest things and the cool things about having your own business is you can work whatever hours you want, which also means you end up working Saturdays and Sundays a lot of the time, when you're busy. So time management has been a huge thing that I've had to like adapt to. So what I try to do now, like in the summer or when I book helmets or whatever, I try to take into account, I'm going to be gone this many weeks in the summer for racing, and adjust my workload as needed. And then every week on Fridays, usually I'm out at Badger doing coaching locally. So I try to take Fridays off of helmet painting and just go to the track, be outside, run around in the sun, and inhale two-stroke fumes as often as possible. And that seems to maintain my sanity a little bit better too.
Cool. So before we get to the commercial break and some more of the current news here, is a guy that's been in the sport for decades now, a little platform to kind of talk about what the stuff you've seen. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you'd love to see karting do more in the next, near future, or stuff that we could learn from the past? Or, we talked the Yamaha class. I mean, that was cool, obviously, in a really good era as well.
Yeah. Honestly, I think karting's in a pretty decent spot right now. I mean, we have a lot of entries at these big races, which is awesome. My dad is series admin for USPKS and he was for Route 66, and he ran Midwest Sprint Series as well. So like I kind of have some intel on the back end of that stuff. And, like we have a lot of entries, we have big races, we have stuff like Kart Chaser coming to events and giving us good TV coverage, which is something that we, as kart racers, we're begging for decades. Oh, please, we need somebody to show good video of this sport, because that's kind of how the sport's best demonstrated is with video, audio, and live coverage. So I think honestly we're in a pretty good spot. The only things that I would see that personally that I would like to see from a driver's perspective or whatever is a little bit more ability maybe for cross series cooperation. We're getting some of that now, which is pretty cool. I know a lot of the series are talking to each other a lot, about rulings and stuff like that. So that's cool to see. But maybe, further cooperation on licensing or maybe some other things where we can make it easier for American drivers to get a chance overseas at big events, which has also kind of been a thing that we've been talking about for years and years and years. It's just logistically really tough, but there's all kinds of opportunities, but I would say that karting, as far as I can see, is in a pretty good spot right now, in my opinion. I'm sure there's plenty of people who disagree with me, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, well, I obviously I'm biased too, right? I think that the sport's in a good spot. We've seen so many different classes that have come and gone, and a lot of times it was a lot more region based than I feel like it is now. In a lot of ways, it seems more uniform, and like you said, the series cooperation's been good. The world supply chain doesn't help on the pricing side, which seems like that's tough to fight. But, for at least everything in our control, it seems like it's going, in a good direction, and everyone gets amped up after Supernats for the most part too. So that always helps to end the year. It seems like on a high, and this year seemed good too.
Yeah, for sure. Supernats is such a cool event, and it does a great job of finishing off one year and kicking off the next year. And now, especially that we've got, live coverage of it. And it's such a cool event, and it's really cool that other people are getting to see that now a little bit more too.
Well, we got a lot more to show you guys here tonight. TJ will be on us here for this next segment. We'll go to commercial really quick and get into a lot of the current news, but I wanted to give you guys, again, a little background into him because TJ is a good friend of mine. I think he has a lot of good insights on the sport. He's been around it longer than I have, and like many, obviously, carbon dating myself there too, but we'll bring in plenty more panelists throughout here this winter as well, and continue to give you guys more. But let's go ahead, get on to it. We'll take this quick commercial break. When we do come back, lots of news. Wrapping up, of course, the Rotax World Finals happened while we were on our little vacation. There was some more series updates that came out for 2023 and a whole lot more. So stick with us, guys. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. And on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. At New Gen Motorsport, we're committed to using our 10-plus years of experience and knowledge to help grow the sport of karting from the bottom up. Our goal is to make karting more accessible to the average person, lessening the financial burden of getting started, and making the learning curve as small as possible. Our passion is training and developing drivers, mechanics, and engineers to not only be the best they can be in karting, but also for careers in the much larger world of professional motorsports. A strong foundation makes building bigger easier. Let us be that foundation for your karting and motorsports career. Be part of the new generation of motorsport. Contact us today to schedule your test day, arrive and drive race event, or to inquire about how we can help get you started in your own new gen racing kart. Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including IAMI and ROC divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amar Sanada at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. All right, everybody, welcome on back to the show here. Myself and TJ Koyen kicking things off with some news, joining us for the first time, and we just got done kind of going over his background a little bit. So let's go over and we'll kind of do a bit of a speed run here. I have Aaron Hackmeister helping us on the back end here tonight because there's a lot that we wanted to cover, and there was a lot of news that came on out. So we'll go ahead and touch on that and then kind of talk about a few points. First of all, we've been covering a lot of the track developments throughout 2022. There's a lot of exciting stuff, like TJ said, throughout the sport. There was, of course, a few unfortunate moments through the year, as with any year, but I think overall it's been a net good year. We've covered a lot of the track improvements. The Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati had a full-on repave, continuing to add on more as they prep for the U.S. Pro Kart Series and that track's national debut in 2023. The Dallas Karting Complex track has been finally moving forward. I say finally because they've not in a bad way. They've been pushing to get this finally done, and their first leg of a two-legged, two-track, ultimately operational at a super track type level track revamp, complete redesign, complete repave, tearing up the old, bringing in the new. The first leg of the racetrack is finished. They're actually having rental carts on it now. They've been able to have some club racing and some test days on it. And then the second track tore up, but it's in the worst part of the year because the rain and the mud just stays. There's not a lot of sun, obviously, here. While it does get cold enough in northern Texas where those guys are at, it'll probably be spring of 2023, later end, when I think they were hoping to get the second leg of the track process completed and to kind of continue to get that ready to potentially host big races there again. They're already hosting the Southwest Regional Cup, and there's still two to be determined Texas Sprint Racing Series dates. So on the regional level, it'll be coming back in 2023, which is cool. Their club series has been back up. The Amarillo Kart Circuit is a really cool track that not a lot of people know about. It held the Rock Festival West a few years ago, and it was kind of a hobby track. It was built by this really generous, awesome dude who let everybody come and race it as a fun racetrack to mimic off of, I believe, the Suzuka go-kart track, if I'm not mistaken. I think I could be wrong on that. But beautiful racetrack. Unfortunately, a little bit further out from a lot of the major cities in the metro area. It's 4 hours from where we are based in Dallas, and it's northwest of us. But it's a beautiful facility. It's going under an ownership change. It was a little bit uncertain as to what 2023 and beyond would look like, if that track would still be around. The good news is it is going to be around. There's actually some more money being pumped into it. And as that news continues to develop, that's some really cool news. We saw over during the break the Michiana Raceway Park in South Bend, Indiana, going up for sale from the Lobaugh family, which is a mainstay karting family for some of our newer viewers and newer to karting community people. The track in South Bend, Indiana is about 2 hours north of Newcastle Motorsports Park. It's hosted club racing, regional, national. It's hosted the U.S. Grand Nationals. It's hosted for Rotax. It's hosted numerous U.S. Pro Kart Series events. And it's up for sale, so hopefully that gets to stay around and a new family takes over the reins there. And then on that's on the track side. On the series side, the Northeast Karting Challenge is going to be coming together. We teased it on our show last week, and I believe, Aaron, we got the little press release we can pull up on it. So the Northeast Karting Alliance, basically what the show will be, this is a really cool thing, talking about everybody working together, TJ. This is the group of shops up in the Northeast between all the ones listed there. Mike Doty is Mike Doty Racing, Keith Raffa with Full Tilt, John Bonanno with Fulcrum Competition Services, which is shout out to John Bonanno. He's recovering from a hip replacement surgery. So hopefully he continues to be on the mend. I saw one of his posts. He looks in really good shape. Adam Pettit, a solo kart, and then John Ferris, the Team Ferris Racing, and Jerry White, a Kartworks. So a lot of the major shops in that area coming together to kind of be a community board to get some racing back going in a region that's kind of been a little bit in flux the last couple of years. So they're going to be at New Jersey Motorsports Park, Englishtown Raceway Park. Was sounding like earlier this year was going to be sold, demolished. The go-kart track was going to go away. That's not yet going to happen. So that track is still going to be around in the Northeast, which is really, really cool. They've got the support of IAMA USA East and MG Tires, and they're working on getting, obviously, that's a big Rotax hotspot with a J3 competition hub in the Northeast. So and the Trophy East series that those guys run. So cool, and a cool little shout out for them that we wanted to get to as well. And speaking of Rotax, the Rotax Grand Finals were underway back in just a week ago. A number of our U.S. drivers, unfortunately, just the way it started, that week starts almost a week prior. You have to get into town Saturday, and I think Sunday or Monday is the kart draw. And it was during the very end. That Saturday and Sunday was Saturday, and then Super Sunday from Supernats 25. So we missed out on some of these superstars like Jorge Ortiz and Junior. He had a good result coming from way back in the field, nearly 30th up to 14th in his main. Cooper Auclair got into the main 22nd. Kai Johnson and Gage Corn were up front most of the week in Minimax. Kai had a bad run in the main, but Gage got into the top 10 in only his second Rotax finals, and he was the highest U.S. finisher. Derek Wang would have been right up there. Unfortunately, DNF'd out of the top 5 in DD2 Masters. And then Marco Samet, who was kind of a standout micro kid this year, was in the top 20 after some issues in qualifying, didn't even get a single lap in. So I wanted to give a shout out to those kids over there. That race is super, super cool. Next year it goes over to Bahrain, which is a bucket list racetrack for me. I think it's one of the coolest racetracks in the world. If you haven't seen it, you have to look it up. It's a beautiful circuit right by everything that goes on in Bahrain. The F1 track out there as well. It's top tier. It's hosted CIK Worlds. It's hosted the Rotax Worlds before. It's going to host it again, which is cool. And then as for us, before we get into more of the discussion points, I was hoping that I was going to be able to get our 2023 KC broadcasting schedule to kick off our return to KC Happy Hour. I don't have it done yet. There's a few things that still need to kind of materialize and fall into place. The good news is we are going to be busy, very, very busy. So a very similar schedule to what we had this year. We'll have a lot of U.S. majors on the ticket, and pretty identical with a couple extra races that we're going to sprinkle in as well. So excited on that point. That official announcement of where our tentative schedule for 2023 will probably be next week. But for everyone that's been following along of all the series and hoping that or messaging us asking if your series that you plan on racing in is going to be streamed next year, the answer more than likely will be yes. We're going to be busy again, but it's going to be a cool season. And so as we look to the series that we streamed this year and talk about it, USPKS, obviously TJ with your dad being involved, you get to hear a lot of the back end. You get to kind of give some input on the back end as well, I'm sure. That's got a few updates coming into 2023. Most notably here, anything that stuck out to you first that you wanted to hit on it? I know that the single event weekends is a big one too.
Yeah, we can start right with that. I think that's pretty cool. I do get asked a lot by Mark Coates, the series owner, and my dad, my opinion on a lot of this stuff. And I mean, they don't listen to me all the time, but yeah, I think I'm a trusted source in their eyes on what people want. And yeah, the thing about the series is it's just gotten so big. There's so many entries that you have to, like, the way the timeline has to work to get everybody the laps that they pay for. Like, you got to change some stuff up. And I think the single final thing I think it's a cool way to do it anyway. I think I've always kind of thought, regardless of what series it is, that having two separate finals kind of diminishes the value of each final. And it kind of, like, from a spectator's point of view who isn't a go-karter, that seems like a weird format that you would have two finals like that. So for me, I think it's a cool idea. You know, I think it puts a lot of weight on that one final, and it makes sure that, you know, people who can't, I don't know what I'm trying to say. People who need two chances, it's going to be harder for them. So it's really going to make the cream rise to the top, I think. So personally, yeah, I prefer that one final kind of format, and, you know, that's how they do it at Supernats and stuff too. And it makes that Sunday it makes it special. So I think it adds a lot of hype to that final day of racing.
And I don't want to put you on the spot on the timeline stuff, but where does that all line up? I know it'll be A, B, C, D heats for the classes that would have a potential LCQ. Does that mean we qualify on the Friday afternoon is where things are leaning towards, or would it start everything Saturday morning, you think?
I can't remember because there's always like, my dad's always like, oh, we got to move this here. Oh, now we got to move this here. Oh, they want this many laps. Oh, we got to do this. So I know that the timeline is always like in flux until it's like a game of Tetris. You have to fit everything exactly where it fits. So I don't know where it's at right now, but uh, I think they heard the feedback last year when they tried that different format, and people kind of complained about how, because you were qualifying both Saturday and Sunday on Friday, I think it was. Like it
Yeah.
was one section
So
after another or whatever.
yes, it
And I don't think
was
people like that. So
no.
I think people
It
would
made a lot of
rather,
tire changes.
yeah, I think people would rather qualify on the day of racing, but I don't know where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, so we have, a couple single weekend formats that are easy to look at first. Rock has roughly the same number, I think a couple more with the VLR classes put in, but the winter tour schedule for them has usually Friday qualifying, and then they do 4 heats. I think we're doing 3 and no pre-final, right? If I'm not 100%, but I think that's where I read the release on where we're at. So 3 heats, which would mean that you could definitely fit qualifying, I think, warm up qualifying and probably 2 heats in on Saturday if they were short enough, and then do a Sunday warm up, final heat, and then main. So it could fit that way. And then for them, right, they do qualifying on Friday afternoon, which means you only get normally 2 practice sessions Friday for them. So it really shortens their Fridays up a good bit, because then it's 2 practices, a lunch break, qualifying, and then opening round of heats. Saturday is I think heats 2, 3, and then 4. And then Sunday is the split final format. But their days end a little bit sooner as well, with the way that their track time spread out, and that stuff starts a little bit earlier in the week. So it's not the only way to do things for sure, but it changes things up. And then, again, like that was always the point from a lot of people, is that the Saturday winner kind of gets forgotten when you come out of the weekend. Everyone remembers the guy that wins on Sunday usually.
Yeah, like back when we were running WK Manufacturers Cup, they even broke it into 2 championships, like with the tag class. So like tag was the same class, but you ran a final on Saturday and a final on Sunday, and they counted towards different championships, which I was always like, what's happening? There's going to be 2 champions for the same class? That didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that was back where like triple crowns were a lot easier to come by, with 12
Yeah,
classes in the day and each class
yeah.
having their own title and everything.
I ran 6 classes in Daytona the one year.
Yeah. Just such a different culture change too, right? Like how we got to that point, and then where we sit now is funny almost to look back, because it's not that long ago. It's just a little over 10 years ago that was still pretty common in the late 2000s and 2010, of where we had a bunch of classes, and then now we're down to a pretty standard set of 7 to 8 everywhere we go, and that seems to be more of the ask for sure.
Yeah, I think it was always a big issue with the people who were competing up front. They were like, well, why do we have 25 classes? And the people who just wanted the participation trophy, it seemed like they wanted to be in a class where there was 6 carts, whatever. But I know at Daytona, I ran Yamaha light, Yamaha heavy, KPV light and heavy, Rotax, and then I ran tag with my Rotax cart. So it was, I was back and forth up and down to the grid every 5 minutes. It seemed like I never got a break.
Yeah. So moving on from that, then we talk about class changes, which is a good segue. X30 Masters has been around for a while. And then next year, SCUSA just announced they're going to do the same thing as well, starting with the Winter Series. So that'll be KA Masters and replacing the X30 Masters for them, following all the hype from Supernets they got as well. Being in that talk has almost seemed like it spanned almost 2 or 3 or maybe more years, when right after the KA hype really got going, 2019 into 2020, numbers exploding on the senior side, and the X30 Masters numbers never really kind of grew, So what were those talks like a little bit from the inside each year to year?
I mean, the series is always considering classes every year, and what can they afford to keep, because like I said, the timeline has to be, there's a certain amount of minutes in the day. So if you don't want to start taking minutes off of what people are paying for, you have to keep a set amount of classes. So they're always talking about what classes are available. And I know that the KA Masters conversation has been going on for a while, and it's kind of been like, well, let's see how many people, I think USPKS does a pretty good job of polling their customers, informally asking them online or whatever what they want to do. And it seems like it was kind of 50-50 KA or X30 for a lot of these guys. And it just ended up being, well, we already have the X30 stuff. Why don't we just do it for another year or whatever? And I think a lot of it too is like those Masters guys, some of them, their egos don't want to let them go slower. But then I think the success of the KA class and just how easy and bulletproof and foolproof it is, I think a lot of those guys are like, well, I mean, who cares really? Let's do the easy thing and go run KA instead. So I think it's just slowly been ebbing that way. Like as the Masters guys just get used to the idea of running KA instead of X30. Over time, some of them switch, and eventually it's just more KA guys than X30 guys. And then of course you saw at Supernats where they put together a great KA Masters class, like a really strong field. And I know locally too. At Badger, they have what they call the Tag Masters series, which is kind of an informal series that the Masters guys run and put on and run alongside the club race. And it was always tag, X30, kind of open tag. And then eventually they switched to 100cc stuff in the past couple seasons too. And it seems like a lot of those guys are a lot happier, at least at a club level, running that stuff. Because X30 is kind of dead at club anyway. So it probably makes it easier to draw from those club racer guys too. And yeah, like I said, the Supernats hype, I think, was really good for that class as well. So I think it's a good move, honestly. I'm a big fan of KA though, so I might be a little bit biased.
I've always thought, and I'm curious what you think about this, right? That like the KA came out a few years after the X30 really got its push. The X30 had been around, I think, even when it debuted in the Gold Cup 4-cycle series for whatever reason with WK in like 2011.
Yeah.
Is by the time it finally got going, 2013, 2014, replaced the Leopard, which was a good transition, seemingly smooth transition on the national stage, a little bit less so at the regional stuff, but it was shooting kind of between that regional versus national threshold, both price point, usability, complexity, and speed. And the speed thing was the thing that stuck out to me the most. And that was, I felt like a comment we had and something that a lot of people talked about in like the late 2010s, like 2016 to 2019, that we wanted the seniors to go a little bit faster, and then at the same time, it was a little bit too fast for the regional stuff. KA seems to have gotten the regional stuff, a much better happy medium of speed and budget for the next level up from racing. In a perfect world, I feel like it would have been better if the KA would have came out first, taking away what was happening prior to it, right? But if the KA comes in and cuts that bottom off, then it opens up just the top half of the guys that wanted to go faster. What do you think? In your years running X30, did you feel like it was, because it seemed like it was almost too close, in terms of how quick guys could get up to speed and how tight the fields ended up being?
Yeah, I mean, X30, I started running it when it came here in 2012. I was one of the first ones running it in the tag class. And at that point, we just kind of viewed it as a replacement basically for the Leopard, something that was going to be more reliable and a little bit easier to work with. But yeah, for me, I'm master's age at this point, but I'm still a senior in my head. And for me, the most important thing about with any of these engines or any class that you're running is going to be parity and like relative level of competition. So I really like the KA class. I have no problem going slower than an X30 if I'm running KA and I know that the engines have good parity and they're durable, they're foolproof to run. And you have, of course, 40, 50 entries. So I really, no regrets going from X30 to KA. And you're on a harder tire. You're not using brake pads as often either. You're not dealing with a radiator and water. It's just a way easier life. So, yeah, I don't know. To me, that seems like the natural engine for Masters.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to get it over to there. And then the other series, even smaller numbers, right, than PKS this year, we're pulling decent Masters fields in KA.
Yeah.
The Stars Championship Series has kind of been that super regional touring series, pseudo national, but really kind of a national light, maybe the better way to describe it. And it pulled almost 20 at each of their races throughout the year. So, proving even on a smaller base, total turnout and a smaller probably base to draw from, that the numbers would be there, right? And then in theory, you'll have the X30 Masters guys at USPKS switch over, and the bottom half of that stars field may not feel like they're up at that level yet, and they won't go. But you would imagine we end up probably 2025 when we roll out the gates in Orlando in a few weeks. So I
That'd be
agree.
great. Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense. We talk faster stuff. The OKN engine coming to the States, coming in a couple series next year, is pretty big news.
Yeah.
You've been on the Kart Pulse forums here. This is a screenshot from one of our good buddies, Simone Perego, who is the FIA karting rep. And so this was a screenshot from a karting test that they just did a couple weeks ago when they were trying to continue to work on the junior version as well as fine tune the senior version. Since we've last talked about this engine, they've now added 2 more manufacturers to the total pool. It started off with IAMI, Modena, TM, and Vortex. Vortex being the OTK arm. Obviously, we know IAMI, Modena, and TM have been long-time OK, Mini, KZ, very well-known names. And then Rexon Motors is now in, as well as Lenzo Kart engines as well. So now 6 manufacturers in the pool. As an outsider, as someone that will probably not find himself owning that engine or racing that engine, I would imagine in the current time. What has been your thoughts watching this development process throughout the year? Where is your head at when you look at this engine and you look at this class as it comes to the States?
I think it's a cool package, to be honest, and I wish it would have been here 6 years ago when I was running X30 at the national level, because it would have been something I was interested in. I know back maybe 14, 15, maybe. I don't remember when the OK engine debuted, but I think it was around then, maybe 16. I don't remember, but USPKS had considered adding not OK, but they were going to add the Vortex DVS engine, which is like an OK derivative. I think it's similar.
Yeah.
It's a push start. And so they allowed testing of that. They had one for demonstration runs at some events. So I got to drive that, and it was so much fun. It was such a cool engine. It was so fast, like completely sideways spinning the tires through the S's at South Bend. And it was nuts. Like it was a lot of fun to drive. So from that point on, I was like, I mean, I've always kind of wanted to run that level of engine, ICA, KF, a little bit less so, but the OK package seems a little bit more pure, a little bit cool compared to what KF was. So I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm glad it's coming over here now, and some series are taking a chance on running it. To be honest, I don't know how many go-karts they're going to get running it, but I think they're going to get a few. And I think it's going to be a cool experiment, at least. And yeah, it seems like a pretty decent package. It kind of takes the complexity, what little complexity is left on the OK package, and it gets rid of that, like the power valve and stuff. And it just seems like a nice, well thought out package. And you've got a set of regulations that everyone's building to, so it should be good parity between engine builders. It gives an opportunity for different engines and teams or whatever to run what they want. That's kind of a cool thought too. A little bit different maybe than the spec racing we've gotten so used to here. But yeah, I would love to try to drive one. I would have loved to race one when I was full time a few years ago, but just a little bit timing is a little bit bad for me.
Yeah, a little over the hill.
Yeah.
But not too far, right? Not too far. Did you ever get to race any of the direct drive stuff, or was that was still, even in your era, a little past you?
Yeah, so I ran junior ICA for I think just a year. But I ran junior ICA, which they had at like regional series and at WKA, which was awesome. That was such a fun engine to drive too. It's not direct drive. It's got a low clutch, like a HPV or something, but it was 18,000 RPMs and about as fast as a Leopard at 305 pounds. So it was a really fun kart to drive. And then I was going to run ICA either the next year or the year after when I moved up to seniors, but they canceled it right the year I was going to move up. They canceled it. So I didn't really get a chance to. But I really would love to get an ICA engine and throw it on a kart and just take it out to the track for some fun practice days.
Yeah, our good friend of the show and karting mainstay Mike Geeson's got probably one of the coolest collections, only rivaled by Lynn Haddock and a few others, and he's got a few of them that you see rip around. And there's just nothing cooler, right, than hearing a motor pushing like 18,000, 20,000 RPM, like screaming. I mean, that was one of the cool parts of the Leopard shows. I mean, you were in them, but as a kid growing up at USPKS running junior and then lining the fence to listen to the scream of the Leopards pushing 17,000 was something else.
Yeah, I mean, I have very vivid memories of being a junior and being at WKA races when they had ICA and watching them come down the straightaway and being like, that's going to blow up for sure, right? And then a lot of them did. But the sound was pretty awesome before they blew up. And then even when we had the mixed tag class, you had like the Sonic engine and stuff, which ran like 18,000 RPMs too. And that was pretty cool. You had to run that cart at like 400 pounds to be legal in that class. So it wasn't as fun as an ICA at 330. But yeah, those were some really awesome engines that I really wish I would have gotten a chance to drive.
Yeah, I was going to say at 400 pounds, was there any chance you were making that cart weigh enough to be able to run it?
I don't think I ran the Sonic. I don't think I could have made weight. I ran everything but the Sonic. But I know the guys who were running the Sonic, racing against them in Leopard, you'd eat them up in the infield, and then you get to the straightaway, and it was like they had 3 more gears they could pull on you down the straightaway. So yeah, that made some interesting racing.
Yeah, it was something else. It's slightly detuned. We got some of the numbers that Simone from the FIA had kind of given through the forums on the Kart Pulse forums, which is cool. There's a thread of almost 260 posts on there and continuing to go for those that watch the show, and it's something to check out. He ended up at 36 horsepower is what he said the senior is going to measure at, which is a little lower, of course, detuned from where the OK seniors run, which I think they push 40. The OKNJ, the junior version, going to be at 27, so a couple less than an X30, which runs at 30 horsepower. The Rock GP, I think, is 32. It might be as high as. Is it 36? Is it higher? I feel like it's a couple horsepower up.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's faster than the X30.
Yeah, it's quicker, but this one should be right around where that point is. And then the weight's still to be decided. You lose the battery, right? That cart could probably come down to a 345, maybe 350 weight. I think the 345 is what they were looking at.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think KF, like when KF was out, it was like, I don't remember what it is in kilograms, but it ended up being like 353 weight.
Yeah.
But then they had a battery and a starter and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it'll end up being a little bit lighter, but it's cool to see on the outside. It's fun for us to talk without actually being the ones buying the motors and racing them. So we'll see what the guys say when they get over here. But that was a cool development to see. The junior stuff coming is going to be interesting. What the Stars guys do, what Challenge of the Americas looks like. I mean, both of those series find themselves kind of in a rebuilding point. Well, not Stars on a rebuilding point as a whole. They're in a build in general, but the X30 numbers weren't there, so it was an easy swap out, right? And then in the same way in Challenge, it's been in a building stage for the last few years with the Rock program. The Rock GP didn't stick for them in junior and senior, so this was a good alternative. They've got a junior shifter class over there coming in 2023, which hasn't been around for a while, and we've got shifter guys coming on. So TJ, there was not a lot of shifter East Coast stuff. You were one of the first guys to start going to the SCUSA Pro Tour, seeing the Hondas, driving out, sometimes privateering it. Did you ever end up having enough of an interest to want to jump over?
Oddly enough, no. I never really had the interest or the opportunity or anything to drive a shifter. And I don't know. It could be because I grew up, running single speed stuff, and I enjoyed it. And it seemed like that's where my talents lied, was maybe in the single speed stuff. I don't know how good I'd be in the shifter stuff, especially now. But it'd be fun to give it a rip, just see what it's like. I know a few guys that, like when I was running with Merlin, we had Kyle Kalish, who was a national level tag driver. He switched to the Honda right at the end of his karting career, and he got pretty good with it. And he said it was a lot of fun. And I think it's kind of like a different lifestyle mindset being a shifter guy versus a single speed guy. There's a little bit of a gap there between the two, probably. Maybe not. I don't know. I know AJ and Danny have obviously driven all kinds of stuff. But yeah, for me, it was always just single speed stuff. I was never like I think it's cool, but I was never like, I need to get in that and drive it. Maybe I'm a wimp, like Danny says.
Right. We'll get to hear from him in a little bit, and he'll probably call us out. I was in the same boat. I never had the interest, and I think by the time I was getting to senior anyway, it was right at that lull period where the Hondas were out, and West Coast was really the only place that it was having them. West Coast and then the Pro Tour. So in the same way, it hasn't just never stuck. And then now I'm doing this, so I'm not in it as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like at Dousman, there was a WKA race, and they had ICC then at the time at Dousman, and I remember standing on the fence to watch the start, and those guys were like doing wheelies coming off the line, going into turn one on the start on the launch. And I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. And maybe that scared me too much. I don't know. I always just thought the ICA was a little bit cooler with the driving style of how you got to drive direct drive and the 20,000 RPMs.
I got to give a little shout out here to our man Wesley Steege from up there, the captain of the Tag Masters. He's right as well. I completely left it out, totally on me. But there's a lot of tracks also that got repaves as well. Badger Kart Club's one of them. So
I should have mentioned that too. Obviously,
yeah,
I'm there every
yeah.
week. I should know that.
Right. So what was the big change? Because it had so it's a full repave. Is it done with any of the Rhino grips? Because that was the new patch, right? It was like super grippy, the new stuff that went down in the expansion a few years ago.
Yeah, so they expanded it. I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but Dousman had a hairpin that came back onto the straightaway. Instead, they added an expansion that went 90 degrees to the left instead, and you had like a long left and then 2 hairpins back to the straightaway. And then those 2 hairpins, they like rhino lined it, and the one corner is banked, and it's pretty easy even at a club race to get up on 2 wheels there in that corner on a hot day. So it's pretty brutal. It destroys your neck. And it's kind of an interesting tuning challenge to set up for those last 2 corners. But then also you have the old 20, 30-year-old pavement on the other side that isn't as grippy and some concrete. So it's kind of an interesting layout. But now, so they've repaved all the old stuff, which I guess was done in the 90s last time. And I don't think they're rhino lining it. I don't think they are. I don't know as though that's been a huge hit with the club racers.
Yeah.
But I kind of hope they don't do it. But it's going to be a lot smoother, and that's a welcome change because that track sees a lot of, cold and hot weather and expansion and cracks, and it's taken a beating all the times, and it's getting a little rough. So I'm pretty excited about that, to see how that track drives now that it's going to be glass smooth.
And so was that right at the end of the season? Did it end up cutting the season a little bit short?
Yeah, usually I think they end in October, and they cut it short a couple weeks in September so they could get everything dug up before the ground got cold. And they started it immediately, like after cleanup day, where they took all the barriers out. They started tearing it up as people were getting everything cleaned up. So it's all done, I think, and it should be exciting to see how that works out next year.
And speaking of Badger, it's a track right, and as more neighborhoods have popped up around the racetrack, right? Badger,
Yeah.
along with many kart tracks, is no stranger to the noise ordinance and noise police that go to city council and try to shut down every racetrack that they move right next to. Rotax came out with now a cadet version, a single battery version of their electric motors. Have you seen some of the stuff that's been coming out a little bit from them with the E20?
Yeah, I've kind of followed it a little bit. I think there's some guys posting about it on Kart Pulse every now and then. And I know there's all kinds of electric kart projects in the works. The guys at the Top Kart North America guys or USA guys, they were working on their own thing too, I think. I don't know if they were in cooperation with somebody else, but yeah, the Rotax thing, I've heard from 1 or 2 guys who have driven it, and they say it's pretty cool. It's pretty quick, and as usual with all the electric kart stuff, the weight is the big factor. So if you didn't enjoy driving the Sonic at 400 pounds, I think you're going to be in for a rude awakening a little bit with the weight on some of these electric karts. But obviously the tech is getting better every day and lighter. And it could be a unique opportunity for places like you just said, where there's noise ordinances or emissions ordinances or something like that. So I think it's a cool, interesting technology. Not maybe my cup of tea, but it probably has some sort of use somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like electric carts are any bit new or electric cars any bit
Yeah.
new. I mean, they've been around for a while. Electric indoor carts have been around for a while, and people have tried the projects as the technology's gotten there. I mean, Badger, I'd heard this only from going to the racetrack. I think when I went there for the last WK Man Cup that was hosted there a few years ago, if not for the route race this year, that it wasn't long ago. It was decently long ago. The last time that the neighbors had kind of spiked up a little bit, it was when one of the new neighborhoods was getting built, and Badger was able to get out of it, claiming kind of holding legacy, right? That the track has been around since the '60s or something like that. Been around for a long time. Was able to avoid some of the, ramifications of it. But I think the electric stuff, at least, it opens up more doors for, tracks that are going to get encroached on. I mean, even down in Homestead, in Florida, they've got more developments and more developments as Miami comes out. Like it's It's I don't know if I'll ever be able to get over the no sound. Just hearing tires screeching is like nails on a chalkboard to me. Watching some of
Yeah,
the race, it just seems so weird.
it's an odd sensation, like when you go to drive a rental cart that's electric or whatever, and you can just hear the tires scrubbing, and you're like, "What is the cart handling bad?" And I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's like stuff you don't notice, right? We don't notice how much we actually like really work the tire when you're like driving
Yeah,
it. You know
or
how much that
the
thing.
wind noise where you're like, "Wow, it's really windy out here."
Yeah, it's I don't know. It just seems it's cool. It's very, very cool. There's
Yeah,
no doubt. The tech's super cool. And the application, it'll be one of those things. This is one thing I think that everyone's probably, at least most purists, are happy that it's going to be Europe first and America last on that, because there's
yeah,
countries over there that are going to be net zero or carbon neutral, very, very soon, a lot sooner than even California.
yeah,
I mean, countries that could be banning the combustion engines in the next couple of years,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
having a company like that pioneer it, just like how they pioneered a lot of the push start or button start engines with the Rotax packages is interesting. They had said on one of the posts on Facebook I'd read that the battery charging time is like 45 minutes for roughly a 25-minute run. So it's not terrible. And they're not, at least where they're at now, it's not terrible on the power draw, because that was, I think, one thing that some people get confused on when they talk the electric. It's not so much the carbon pollution that's the issue. It's the noise pollution that everyone's fighting for. I mean, obviously, on the legal stuff for every country, that's part of it. But for a lot of racetracks and just a lot of racing in general, there's the sound that everyone comes in, and that's the first complaint before even the emissions.
yeah. And you see this at like top level racing with F1 and Formula E and stuff. How like at the Miami race this year for F1, people were all upset that they were having these loud race cars in their backyard. And then you see Formula E, and they can race in the city centers, and nobody cares about it because it's not that loud. Um, so yeah, I mean, I prefer the engines we have now, but I'm not some sort of old school purist where all battery technology and electric engines are awful. Yeah, I think there's a use case for it. So if it comes down to it, I would say driving an electric cart is far better than not driving any carts. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it'll still be years out for sure,
Yeah,
before we get that, obviously. But it's cool to watch that kind of development happening. At least someone thinking, and multiple companies, on different projects, looking towards, the future of what it could look like. It's got to get down, and then from a track standpoint, this is where again the arguments of like the carbon emissions are like, well, we're charging off a generator, so we're still burning gas anyway. But I think we'd be way out, and I don't even know how much. Would be needed if the batteries keep getting better and better and longer life and less to charge, um, to have like charging say at the track, because that was an argument it sounded like from a lot of people for a long time. Well, these tracks are going to have to invest in a ton of infrastructure that will have no return, and get used only. For a national race, we use most national parking lots aren't even paved, right?
yeah,
Even a paved parking lot's super expensive, but that's not
yeah.
been the point for those guys. Less so. But this is a cool point here from Dustin Domey on Facebook. He's talking about indoor venues, right? We haven't seen an indoor sprint race in 15 years. When was the last? I can't remember the last time the PRI show had that Tony Stewart
Oh
little
yeah,
slick track indoor in one of the
yeah,
convention centers. That was a little more goofy than a race with the way
yeah.
the player was, kind of like a Lima Bean racetrack with tags.
Yeah, they had, well, the old school thing was the Bercy France race where they had Senna and
Yeah,
Prost and all those Schumacher. They're all racing indoor with, I think they were running ICA or 100cc, whatever. It was an air cooled 100cc, and that had to be pretty smoky in there. And I think they tried it again with electric carts not that long ago, like as a throwback event, and I don't think it got much coverage or anything. But yeah, you could do events like that where it would be pretty cool indoors, not like a rental cart track where it's twisty, 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 but you could do like a legit indoor race if you had a big enough space.
yeah, and the
Um,
race wouldn't be too bad because those carts are so torquey, right? Like
yeah,
part of the electric pull is it's instant power. There's no bog.
right.
That's the other downside of when we look at like taking, again, like going back, what I can think of is that indoor event there. That the indoor event you're mentioning, there's a cool YouTube video of it with all those guys from the 90s, and they were going through I don't want to call it backstage, but out of the stadium, basically still underneath to make it a full racetrack and pretty
Yeah.
tight and twisty there. Because if you just do it in the confines of a soccer field or a football field, it's you do the math. We can't fully be what Supercross is. Even Supercross is kind of Mickey Mouse type because they stay in first and second gear, but at least they can put the jumps in. We can't do that. A 300-foot straightaway is half the distance of what the old Ocala Grand Prix straightaway was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so tight. But an electric kart with the torque that would be there, that could actually happen because you could still get that power sensation and have it tightened enough to fit inside of some of those indoor venues, in the future.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Actually, I hadn't thought about that use case, but that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, because I think about that obviously on a dream world, right, with where we like to look towards the future, way down the line of Kart Chaser having a big fan base, right? You look at some of the other sports that have been able to do different things outside the box. The NASCAR Clash at the Coliseum being one of the most recent ones, kind of finding their footing of a street race. And now they're doing a street race in downtown Chicago, but that was still a little Mickey Mouse for them, and so a little goofy, being so slow and so tight, but. You take that with really only, I feel like an 80cc shifter would fit well inside of like a stadium. We take the tag carts there, we're going to bog. We take the 206s there, it fit kind of, but it would still be really slow. So from a sexy factor to show off to the crowd, you'd have to bank on just having a really good battle. Otherwise, we're running rental kart speeds.
Right.
But the electric stuff could actually work, in that weird faction. And at that point, then we could easily mic up drivers to talk while we're doing the races as well, because you can't hear them whenever you can barely hear them if you mic it up like perfectly. We've done it a few different ways. We've like stuffed it inside of just like where the radio would go in a driver's helmet, and then just have it like patched down their suit. But then if you put it obviously on the chin or on the collar, you don't get anything but engine sound and then wind.
I was gonna try to do that this year and make I was going to do that actually for the Newcastle race. I was going to mic myself up for the final, but I couldn't figure out a good way to do it. I tried it a little bit at Dousman, and I never got good sound out of it. So that's good to know. I'll make a note.
Yeah, we were able to get it once. I'll have to go check back with our old camera guy, Sean Burkle, because he was able to figure it out. And yeah, it was a small lapel mic. It's not even the ones that we use. We have a couple of like the road mics that are like little square blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Those don't fit, but you have like something that's literally the size of a pencil tip. That's the microphone that have gone viral in some of the TikTok videos you see, and what's a proper TV lapel mic that clips on, and then you can run that wire inside between the helmet padding and then the case, or just tape it right on top of the padding, and you have room for your mouth still inside the helmet, and then you just run the wire down, and you have the little clip somewhere, in your waist underneath the suit, and it works. It's, then you sync back up with the video, and we got to do it one time this year with a track preview with Braden Eves at NOLA, which was cool. So
I saw that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to probably buy one of those for myself and try to do that a little more this year, because I think that's something that you can do for the track previews at least. It's tough to do in the race. I know for me, I never talk during the races like ever.
No, me neither. But I wanted to see what I would say if I had an open mic in my helmet and I was cursing out my fellow competitors or whatever.
Yeah, like, all right, getting ready to go. Oh, that guy's making a stupid pass. Let me get him right over here. Come on, like a bunch of the live react. It'd be hilarious to put on.
Or I could mention, I gotta give you crap for calling me out at the Newcastle race where I totally blew that block and I lost the position instead. And then you were talking about how TJ's showing some rust out there, and really made me feel pretty bad. So yeah, in my helmet, I could be going, oh man, Xander's going to be making fun of me for this. Or most of my career, it's been my dad making fun of me for that over the PA system. So I'm used to that. But yeah, I thought that was funny on the broadcast.
Yeah.
I had to go back and watch that a few times and cry about it.
Yeah, see, I have to be more careful about it because your dad being older, it just seems like as an announcer, you get a little bit less like, kind of, you get a little more slack if like you crack at the drivers, right? But like if I make those jokes like at my age, normally I take it a lot more on the chin, like right after. I mean,
you should know better. My dad's an old man; he can get away with saying all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's like that's just him, right? And like there was one race at the Rotax Vegas where I have a good buddy of mine now, so I can name drop him, Jake Motaz. And Motaz Sport had Matias Ramirez racing, and it was him, Tyler Gonzalez, and Nick Bruckner in the championship fighting for junior max, and Bruckner and Tyler were up front all week. Matthias was having a bad week. He was like 15th. And so I'm like updating the points throughout, and I wasn't even purposely talking about it. I was like, oh, Tyler up here, Nick right here, and Matthias Ramirez just struggling, just can't seem to get the cart to work. And he comes up to me at the end of I think Saturday night or something, and he goes, hey, who do you think you are? And then he starts kind of going in. He's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't, know what I'm talking about, how to tune a go-kart. And the whole time his mechanic is right behind him, like cracking up. So I think I'm getting pranked, right? So I start starting to crack a little grin, and that fired him up more. And he starts coming at me. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, keep my name out of your mouth, blah, blah. And I'm sure other announcers have had this. It's one of the only situations I've had someone really get mad at something I said. About them, but I got into trouble not even meaning to. I was just trying to update everyone. Where's the point set? Where's our championship fight? And I got into like all kinds of crap. And so after that, I was like, okay, I'm just going to be nice to everybody, and if I feel like I know them enough, like you, I can be like, TJ, you messed up right there, man. We caught it.
No, and like I said, my dad, every time I come off the track where my dad's announcing, people are like, you should have heard what your dad was saying about you out there. It was, oh, man. Oh, look, he's commenting. Great.
Yeah, he's watching right here. Yeah. So too funny. Yeah. Well, TJ, we're going to have you on a whole lot more when we have some more stuff to talk about. And as a former full-time pro driver, I don't want to say just former driver, because we'd love to have you back running some more when you can around the family time and everything else. We'll be bringing you for more shows here. So thanks for the segment here. And as a closing segment, what does the rest of your winter look like? Because Badger's shut down for a little bit. So do you get more family time? Do you have a lot more helmets to catch up on and other design work?
Yeah, it's going to be mostly helmets. These days, it's pretty cool. I get to paint for a lot of pro drivers, IndyCar drivers, IMSA drivers, all that stuff. So their season, preseason, and the Rolex 24, all that stuff I got to get working on that already. So that's going to take up most of my winter, and then we'll try to fit in as much family time as we can. And then if I have any spare time, I'm going to try to keep my YouTube channel a little bit more updated with some coaching stuff, some videos on tuning and kart setup and stuff like that. But I say that all the time, and I never get around to doing it. So if you're one of the 2,000 people subscribed to me on YouTube, don't get mad if I don't post something for a few months. I'm doing my best. But yeah, other than that, just going to try to relax a little bit and get a bunch of work done and spend some quality time at home.
Well, on that note, everybody, you guys heard it here first. Raid the comment section, berate him, start sending messages. No, but in all seriousness, thanks for joining us here, TJ.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be just another talking head on your show tonight.
Well, we've got more coming your guys' way here. Of course, thanks to TJ Koyen for joining us, guys. We've got after the commercial break, Danny Formal, AJ Myers are in the studio. Kyle Wick is on his way in. We're going to chat with all these guys here right after this. Line has steadily made progress since its inception in October 2021. On top of servicing the Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana areas with products from Comp Kart chassis, Tillotson Karts and Engines, Miami, Briggs, Honda, and more, they're now promoting race events as well throughout the mid and coastal South region at NOLA Motorsports Park and Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi. Races are already set for the fall of 2022, September 3rd, October 22nd, and November 12th at NOLA Motorsports Park, and 2 dates, September 10th and October 15th at Finish Line Performance Karting. Driver Line is set to finish this year strong. As the Western importer of the Praga and Formula K chassis brands, Leading Edge Motorsports is a high-performance kart shop and race team with a simple mission: teach others the joy of high-performance driving, supply our customers with the highest quality products and services, and most of all, win races. With our remarkable racing inventory, expert services, and top-ranked national-level team to back it up, we'll help to get your new kart racing package up and running fast. From arrive and drive service to kart preparation and driver coaching to the parts you need to get you back on the racetrack, Leading Edge Motorsports is the industry answer. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, Technokart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, Technokart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions of North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SCUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a Technokart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnokartUSA. Welcome back, everybody. Couple updates I got. Thanks to luckily doing a live show. You get live updates when you're wrong or when you don't know what's going on. First, again, a shout out to West Steege with all the hard work he's been doing up in the Midwest, and some cool stuff up at the Badger Kart Club. We've got, he said, no Rhino liner. They added a little bit of banking to turn number 1 and the sweeper corner, and they widened turn number 1 as well, but a proper paving job to Badger Kart Club that debuts in 2023. Awesome stuff, guys. Cool to hear it. And then from TJ's dad, Mr. Tim Koyen, he says, as of right now, we're set with qualifying on Friday afternoon. Now, like TJ said, there was pushback, but as we covered in some of the older shows, the problem was they were changing so many tires because we would go from 3 practice sessions where you normally put on a new set in that final session of happy hour to try and get yourself into a fast group for qualifying. So you put on 1 new set, then 1 mounting job done, then dismount that set of tires, put on a brand new set of tires for Sunday qualifying, dismount, put on a new set of tires for Saturday qualifying, and then you'd at least be able to keep those on. But if you only have 1 set, you dismounted those and put your practice tires on back for the Saturday practice session in the morning. That'll be a little bit easier now with only 1 qualifying session, 1 set of tires to mount, and then dismount at the end of the day if you need to run something else and you don't have a second set of wheels for practice. It says as of right now, qualifying Friday, 3 heats on Saturday and LCQs if needed, and just main events on Sunday. Standard format, and it would get everybody out a little bit earlier on Sunday so you can all stay around for podium. So that's the updates we got over the night. We'll have more guys on the show from an analyst point of view, but let's bring in some of our superstar drivers you guys may have seen on our broadcast throughout the year, as well as on the happy hour show, and as well as, of course, on the biggest broadcast we had all year, Supernats 25. Danny Formal, AJ Myers, Kyle Wick joining us in the studio. Boys, thank you for joining us. Danny and AJ, we try to keep ourselves at least at a good point with the show where we don't end up with too much controversy. Last time we had you boys on, called everybody out, said they were a little bit too scared to run shifter. So first, Danny to you and then to AJ. Danny, what was your kind of reaction you got after that? Because it seemed like, at least on us, we were blowing up. I'm sure you got a good amount of text too.
Well, first of all, great to be with you guys again. It's been a while since I've been on here. Maybe I got grounded after that interview.
No, not at all.
Last July or August, whenever it was. No, it was all positive, really. I got a lot of positive feedback from a lot of parents, a lot of drivers. And looking how big the class got after that interview, I think it was the right words. Maybe I said it the wrong way and AJ said it the wrong way, but the point was made, and it was definitely something that needed to be said.
I think it was a good kick in the rear for sure for everybody. AJ, what about you? You get some text after the last time we had you on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I did receive a couple, probably not as much as Danny. He was kind of the lead man on all that. But after that race, I'm at all these regional shifter kart races in the Midwest and in the Northeast, and there's a bunch of guys showing up in shifter karts that I've never seen before. And I was like, well, who's that? And it's been great to see. And we've seen the shifter kart class grow. And I feel like it's happened ever since that day. It's kind of made some movement.
Well, we'll take that credit, at least a little bit, the 3 of us here. Kyle Wick, this is your first time on the show, buddy. First of all, thanks for joining us. Second of all, we got to wrap up your season. You had one of the biggest moments, unfortunately, not for driving on the racetrack at Supernats 25, but wrap up your year, man. How's it been on the West Coast?
It was a pretty disappointing couple races in the year, but the summer went really well with Utah, and we were able to get some momentum and find the pace we were lacking last year. So we're just pushing for next year.
And then, we look to next year here. AJ, over to you first. With all the hype that's been built, right? How excited are you for the class to continue to go to 2023? Is the buzz, you think, still there? Is building off the Supernats and looking into next year for that deal to continue to grow and then for you to be a part of?
Yeah, it's tough to judge because we always get these 2 races at the end of the year where we see all these shifter karts, and then we're going to go into January and we're going to get a 20 kart field again. And so I'm looking forward to racing. I think it'll be better than last year, and we can only build from here.
Danny, what about you, man? You are a man that's driven a lot of different things with 4 wheels here, but you love this sport, right? We know we're going to get to see at least a little bit next year, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Still talking with Mike and the RPG group to see, what races I can do and what races don't clash with my car plans next year. It's looking like maybe Homestead for the Winter Series to get ready for Pro Tour. get that KC package right. It's not easy to get the carburation right. So that could be it. I unfortunately can't do the Rock Winter Tour. Just a lot of clashing there. So it's really unfortunate. Just I've been running the Winter Tour since 2004 and I haven't missed a single one. So it sucks that I can't, continue that streak of almost 20 years running nonstop. But yeah, I'll try to do as many go-kart races as I can. But yeah, I think that the pace we showed at Supernats was probably the fastest I've been in Supernats in the last 10 years. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out the way it should have. But yeah, I think the group, Mike and everyone under RPG are working truly hard as they work and everything else to try to make the shifter package as competitive as everything else they have under their tent. So that's my job, and I'm going to try to push and help them as much as I can.
And I'd be remiss if we didn't rehash the Supernats, a ton, right? At least to give you guys a moment from your point of view. Danny, when you saw the red flag come out there, did you ask the quarter marshal, or was it instantly, all right, maybe I've got a shot, let me hop in and get the cart to the pit area? What was from your point of view, that whole scenario? Because that was wild for us to watch, but not really knowing what's going on. It seemed like everyone was else also kind of waiting to see what was going on. So walk us through that deal for you. And then Kyle, I want you to hear your side too.
To be honest, in any racing series I've
Oh, we might have lost Danny for a second, man. I think we had this last time, didn't we, AJ? The last time we had this guy on?
Yeah, we couldn't hear him for most of it.
Yeah, his rant was so good, and he just kept cutting out, dude. We just can never get this guy. Well, Kyle, what about you, man? You came off the racetrack. You pushed off the racetrack. Did you see Danny go off, and that was what you went off? What was your deal?
I just didn't want to watch another main event from the infield. So I was like, I asked the corner worker, I was like, can I go home now? And he was like, oh, I guess so. So I just started pushing back. And then Gary's yelling, hurry, hurry. And I'm like, okay. And I get back, and I guess Danny was working on his cart. So they started working on mine. So we got the engine swapped and ran back down there.
Yeah, crazy deal, man. It got you at least a lot of views on the team, showed how hard you guys work over there, as everybody does. But I'm sure that was heartbreaking to get the news once you came running down the deal and sprinting and everything.
Yeah, it was just work. Like, we did a really good job getting the engine on and everything very quickly. So it was disappointing to not be able to go. But at the end of the day, I already had thought we were done 10 minutes before that. So,
Danny, we lost you for a second here, but let me get back to your end.
Costa Rican Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
No, to be honest, every racing series I've ever done in my life, if you do less than 2 laps, it's a full restart. That means everyone on track could get their go-karts if they needed, come back and get 30 minutes to do whatever you want to the go-karts. That is the normal FIA full restart. Like we see in F1 all the time, right? When they get red flag right before, after corner one, they're even allowed to change tires in F1 during a full red flag. So that's what I did. As soon as I saw the red flag after the guy's crazy flip, my steering column was too bad, so obviously I couldn't turn left. So I got on the go-kart, pushed it, started it, got back to the scale, got almost in a fight with a guy. He got so pissed at me. I still don't understand what was his problem, but the mechanics and RPG, everyone, there was about 18 people around my go-kart. We changed the steering column. We had everything ready. We're just waiting for the official, the race director to make his choice or his decision, whatever it was. And his decision was to do just a regular restart, not even a full race restart. You guys did a starting, a rolling start. So it wasn't even a full restart. So obviously, when they don't do a full restart, you can't go back on track. It was very unfortunate. I think that's the only complaint I have is it's the biggest race of the year. Me and Kyle were obviously in the top 5. We're one of the fastest go-karts out there. There's no more races after us, so you can't get more delayed. We already have waited for the sunset break. Just let us race. Just if he doesn't want to put us back into our position, let us race from last. But it's the biggest race. Everyone wanted us to see us race. At the end of the day, it's a show. But it is what it is. It's very disappointed that we couldn't do a single lap in the final. But, it's hard going against a cavalry of Burrells when you're not a Burrell.
Yeah, did you guys experience that at all when you were racing them in the heats? AJ, you first. I know you had more of that experience in 2021 than 2022, but seeing that, did you guys from the driver's seat feel like there was that, like you were outnumbered a little bit, or did it seem kind of normal? Didn't matter the color.
I mean, they all race you as an individual, but it's pretty clear if Burrell came out of the start 1-2, Kremer sends it immediately to second. That's what he's going to do. I mean, you got Burrell up front. I mean, there's stuff like that where people like us over here, we don't have people up there. We just, every man for themselves. You do what you can.
Kyle, over to you. This was one of the few races you had a teammate at, but you spent a lot of not one of the few races. You had teammates throughout the year, but not every race you had them running up front with you. Did you feel at all like you were almost a single car operation at times through the Pro Tour this year?
Yeah, I did, but at the Pro Tour, it's even usually it was mostly one-on-one with AJ, Kremers, and me. It wasn't the other Burrells weren't fast enough every race to be there. Where at Supernats, they had 5 drivers in the top 7. So it was the front of the field was very red, and it's hard. I haven't raced those guys very much, so I don't know how they usually race, but it definitely felt like they were going to be in front of you or you were going to crash. So you had to take your pick.
So let's talk about the racing too, right? From the track design and then also with the pushback bumpers kind of in. I think we're in. It seems like at least the front of the shifter field, right? Let's not talk about that Supernats shifter LCQ because that was just madness. It looked like start to finish on the pro shifter side. But on a regular standpoint, are you guys all pretty much on the same boat that the pushback bumpers aren't needed for your gearbox class?
Yeah. Definitely not needed. Just creates more and more issues, especially people that are good and can kick it out and take you out in the start and, just push it back and not get a bumper. We're not strict enough with it. There's not enough cameras to see the feet of the people. I don't know. I don't know how they do it in Europe, but it's so easy for some people to kick it out. I can't. I've tried so many times. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Of course I've tried it. I've loosened it, went out, hit somebody, try to kick it back in. I can't do it. So it's, I do it as tight as I can. I do it with the pliers, to bring it down. But yeah, I think for shifter, it's definitely not necessary. It just creates more of this. I'm going to brake as hard as I can in first gear in the middle of the corner and just stop the go-kart. And it creates less racing and it creates more crashes because people are just brake checking you in the middle of the corner and you run them over. So for me in shifter, it definitely needs to be gone.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
We saw that the heat that stuck out to me was one of the heats. I don't know if Kayak won 1 or 2, but one where he got to the lead early and there was about 6
he blocked
guys.
Me. He blocked me for 12 laps and there was nothing I could do. There was just absolutely nothing I could do. I would have to, get a bumper and be able to kick it back out. But he could just block so easily. I'm not saying that we didn't have if we had no drop downs, I could go and take him out. But you block for 12 laps, you're going to get a little nudged in one corner. That's going to give you enough space to go through. And the race director is going to see that. He's actually very good at that. And Scusa says, if you block for 12 laps, it'll be okay for me for somebody to move you a little bit. And you can't do that with the drop down. And I'm not saying that's the way you have to race, but at least also you go for a move. I'm not going to be scared that AJ, Kyle, Kremers, French, whatever, just turns down a little bit down on me and I get a bumper and the race is over, So it just creates more drama than it needs to be, in my opinion. For shifter, for tag, it's a different story.
Yeah. Well, they're the reason that it came in the first place, right? Everything with the 125 single speed classes got so nasty. The kids classes, the cadets even were really, really bad on the starts. I mean, AJ, you were in the very end of that era, right before you really were fully on the shifter front, less so in the single speed. You can attest to that it was in 2014, 2015, pretty brutal just to survive the start. And then your race could actually start if you made it through turn 1, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't remember all that well, because it seems to me like when I get out there nowadays, I am way more likely to crash just by someone not seeing you, someone just not caring, kids just not caring about crashing. It's not the same. I don't remember it ever being that bad. Yeah, you could get some dirty moves. And I remember stories back in Winter Tour days, Austin Self gets taken out by Luke Chudley one day on Saturday. Next day, tells the kid, hey, I'm going to do it. Next day, warm up, kid doesn't have a go-kart anymore. And they hashed it out. That's more the way we did things back then, I guess. That's a little extreme. I never experienced anything like that. But nowadays, it's just a bunch of kids, I feel like, when I'm racing, which I guess I was a kid back then. It's just different perspectives. So maybe I was reckless like back then, and I just didn't think so.
We get that a lot from a lot of the times that we have veterans on here, right? We almost sound a little bit like grumpy old men. Kyle, you haven't been here on before, and I don't want to say that in a bad way. We've definitely been fair points on it. But Kyle, have you done any single-speed racing in the last few years, even at the regional level? I know you've been gearbox heavy almost since you got into senior after a year or two.
I haven't done much, but I guess the most recent time was I ran X30, and it was just a block fest because everyone had pushbacks. And after laps 5 or 6, someone just got tired and bulldozed the leader out of the way, and then we all get to race. But it's the one person has to take a pushback penalty back then, where in the shifter it's a lot easier to get a pushback just because of the more brakes, the more power, and everything. So in the tag now, it definitely seems like the pushbacks are necessary because the kids just don't care, is what it looks like.
Yeah, and it's still pretty rough even with them. How to solve that issue is a variety of different reasons that we could try but haven't done yet. But let's shift gears a little bit, both figuratively and literally. Track design has been something I love bringing, Danny and AJ on here and Kyle, you on too, because I always think that when we do these temporary racetracks, the hardest class to make sure that we have a good race is the shifters, because the single speeds between draft and just the natural wider lines of keeping momentum up normally put on a good show everywhere we go, even at places like St. Petersburg, which was tough for them, but it was impossible for you guys when we went back to rock there last year. So looking at this year's Supernats layout, going backwards from last year with a few minor tweaks, have we not, if we didn't have the pushbacks, would any of those passing zones that we didn't see or barely saw, would they have opened up, or was it still just the way it kind of shook out being tricky to get by, Danny?
To be honest, first gear corners kind of screw shifter racing up a little, just because, again, you have to stop in the middle of the corner, downshift to first, and then you get that little F1 effect of whoever gets on the gas early gets a little bit of a gap. But without the pushback, turn 7, I think it was 8, the left-hander, right after where the tire was getting destroyed, the long right, and then the left, which was the only first gear corner in the racetrack, really. If you didn't have pushbacks, I could be, let's say, on AJ's butt or Kyle's butt and push him, use his bumper a little bit, and then get off, right? So maybe it would have been a pass in the last corner. So for sure, the pushback created less passing, but the track still wasn't easy to pass on. Just the way you could make every corner like this is going to make it so hard to pass. Plus the straightaway, we were all running about, I think, the same gear. So it was very hard to pass on the straight too, because you would kind of top out in 6th gear. So it was just hard track to pass. I really enjoyed it by myself when I was driving with no traffic, no one in front or no one behind. The track was really, really fun. The curbs through the chicane were really fun. Using the curb on that long right-hander was really fun. I really enjoyed the track to drive. Just passing wasn't very good for shifters. I really had a hard time passing for sure.
We go back to last year, AJ, with the flat out 90 and then the 180 that naturally shot guys out to the outside. We saw a good amount of passes there because it was tough to kind of keep it pinned low, thinking back the other direction. Would you agree that going that way with it made that kind of corner setup just where like it's a really, really quick but tight enough kind of dog leg or kink or 90 that you guys shift out to the side? Like, what's the dynamics when you think of like what you need to be able to get by a guy when the track design comes around?
I think kind of what killed at the end of the straightaway too was we were not entering the turn 1 from the outside of the track at all. I mean, on a qualifying lap, we were half track entering that corner, and then we stop it in the middle of the corner and get out. So then you come to race, you close one more cart to the inside, and now all of a sudden there is no cart, and you're running the same lap time. So it just really, it's a tough one to get passing done on these tracks. Since first gear, like Danny said, according out of there, the pushback, man, going into a first gear corner on the first lap, starting P21, you go into a first gear corner, it's just everyone doom, 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 doom into a corner, going into a dead stop. And that's when you get your bumper.
Were you able to make it out with yours decently, starting mid grid?
Yeah, I think I pulled the clutch 3 times the first lap. I made it through, saw the red flag. I'm like, this could be really good or really bad. I had a really good start. I didn't want to go back to the full restart. But yeah, I think I made it through the first one. The second restart was when I pushed it in, actually. It was funny because Andrew comes in the pits. He's telling the story about how, I got longy on the restart or something along those lines. I'm like, okay, I hit longy on the exit of turn 1 because he missed a gear. And he's like, oh. I'm like, thanks, Andrew. But literally, no, he was just like, he got moved out a little wide, missed a gear, and I hit the gas and boom. I knocked in like the right side or something. But that didn't matter. That was not my week.
Yeah. I mean, that so from the do you think has there been any hairpins at the Supernats in like the last couple of years where you guys haven't like been on the cusp of first gear? So like when you're blocking your first, I mean, it seems like even some of them have been wide, but not enough. I mean, if you could design the track, right? We'll go top to or bottom to top, building off you, AJ, right? Like what are some of the corners, if you could think back from some of those years that were decent? Were there any, or anything you could do?
A little bit different take on it, but I think it has to do with the fact that there's no grip on the track. The track never got faster from Thursday second session till maybe by Sunday it was a little bit faster. But back in the day, we used to lay down black lines on the track. You used to be able to carry speed. You used to be able to carry a second gear. Where now, in shifter racing especially, it's use the least amount of track as possible, going as hard as you can. I mean, you can't pass me. Stop it in the middle of the corner and get out without using any track, and you don't pass anyone that way. But it's because you can't roll any speed in the middle of the corner. You try and roll speed, and it's just slower.
Was it any better with the Levantos the week before? Did they lay down any more rubber? About the same.
I mean, they got a little better from the beginning. Like the first session, the MG has more grip. MG never got better. Levanto got better, but still
their track layout was worse.
Yeah.
For passing. Yeah. Like it was all those high speed into hairpin. Yeah. You just lost too much through the high speed. When you went into the hairpin, you were never close enough to pass. And it was, again, too easy to defend because we were still trying to make the corner as short as possible.
Yeah. Because that's one thing to factor in too, right? Is the aero wash. We talk about it a little bit in this when we go to tracks like Newcastle, right? You have a fast enough corner. You guys feel that as well, right? With a little bit of understeer running right behind a guy, or is it more so just trying to time the shifts to stay close on him in the high speed, Kyle?
We definitely have some aero wash. The new bodywork is better than the old bodywork, but it's still, with how heavy the kart is and how much more over the limit we are, we definitely lose a lot when you're really close to someone in a high speed.
AJ, your point was interesting about the tires being laid down. Danny, what do you think about that, right? As we talk about trying to make the show, like we said, as good as we can be and having the passing, what was your take on, is there anything that can be done to keep, trying to make the races look a little better?
No, I think the grip thing is definitely something. I'm trying to think back. I've been racing Supernats since 2011. My first couple of years were in tag. Obviously, you can pass in tag in every racetrack they do. As you saw in Vegas this year, tag was actually amazing to watch. KA was awesome to watch. Mini was awesome to watch. But shifter was boring, to be honest with you, just because it was very hard to pass. I don't know what we could do, man. Make the track extremely wide. And the entry is one thing. Not so tight. So maybe, like AJ said, at the end of the straight, I was in the middle of the racetrack. There was no way you're going to pass me in the end of the straightaway. It's physically impossible. So make it maybe a little bit wider. Try to make it no first gear corners, but it's very hard because there is no grip. That's why, for me, it was awesome, right? I was creating a lot more grip than anyone. So I think that's one of the reasons I had a lot of pace. But yeah, passing is just so complicated. It really, really is. I don't know if I think the curbs don't help, to be honest. And you're talking about the guy that loves hitting them. But back in the day, Supernats was no curbs, right? As whoever could get closer to the barriers. Maybe that could help to make the track wider, right? The curbs I don't know how wide they are. I would say they're 2.5 feet, I would say, maybe 3. So take that away. people are gonna, that's almost half of a go-kart width. So maybe that, but it's just becoming so difficult to pass. The low grip, everyone pushing the limits. The brakes and the shifters are getting so good. The engines are withstanding 16 grand on the downshift, so you can brake so deep. And then the drop down. I really do believe that without the drop down, it would be better. But at the same time, behind AJ, the last time I was like behind AJ was in San Pete, and he beat me one of the starts. There's no drop down in Rock, so I was behind him, about the same speed. Maybe I was a little faster. There's nothing I could do. It's just physically impossible for me to pass AJ without crashing with AJ. So it's not a drop down thing. Maybe a drop down at Newcastle would be better. At racetracks, at Homestead, at NOLA, it just make the racing a little bit better. But for street races, the bumper, yeah, it'll make it easier to race and maybe give you a little bit more passing opportunities. But it's not going to fix, how we watch tag with 13, 15, 17 passes in the lap. There's just no way with the tracks that we're building and just too tight. I believe if we make tracks that are a little bit wider, it'll help passing a lot, like a lot more.
Yeah. And it would mean probably sacrificing some of the corners in a racetrack. So then the question goes, because like we talk Rio, we're landlocked. We're not at the Westgate like we were for a few years. We're not at Planet Hollywood like Rock was, which even then that didn't seem like it had a lot of space in 2021 when you won it there. But there was, I think, enough that we didn't need 18 corners on that racetrack. So how do you design a racetrack that maybe we're running 35, 40-second lap times, but at least then we can race a little bit, I mean, would you guys?
We still did a 40.9, that was the track was pretty small. So
yeah,
I don't know why we didn't do original Rio turn one. Original Rio turn one, you could pass even if you had a slower engine on a deep braking zone, like a launch, like 2000, I'm talking about 2014. 14. Yeah, that was the last year. I remember I raced Honda. Man, I was passing people from 6 kart lengths back. Whoa, dive kamikaze. It doesn't matter because it was so wide. It was so wide. You could fit 5 go-karts wide there. Like, that's what was bad for tag, because obviously it would create a lot of wrecks because you would try to go 5 wide. But it would make an amazing passing opportunity. Like, I remember passing in tag. I raced DD2 that year. I raced Honda that year. I raced 3 classes that one year. So it was crazy. You were able to pass so far away. And that wasn't only 14. It was like 14, 13, 11. That was my 11, 12, 13, 14 were the when we ran Rio. And then we went to 15 in Westgate. And then 14, the track was amazing. I remember that track. It was my favorite track of all time. No curbs. Whoever could get closest to the barriers, whoever had bigger cojones, be as close as you can to the barrier. And passing was awesome. I ran Honda. I started 12th and I finished 3rd. Like that would have been really hard to do this year in KZ, even if I had crazy pace. It's just so hard to pass the top guys, the top guys, maybe you passing guys that are a little bit slower and it'd be a little bit easier, but not even. Like even in practice, I had a hard time passing people like easily. I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because you have so much more pace than some people, and even people that are 6, 7, 8 tenths off of you, it's still hard to pass them.
Yeah. Like, and if you take away the barriers, right? In theory, I mean, even in the single speed classes, guys were hitting the curbs, right? So we're laying half as much rubber down in theory. I mean, I don't know how much this would affect it at all. They're still making the same number of laps, right? But we're 2 tires of putting rubber into the racetrack.
It's a new track. It's the new
tire, obviously.
It's not, and it has nothing to do with the curbs, man. Like La Conca, you flip with the grip.
I know. I'm just saying of like a fix for the future, Danny. I get it. Everybody knows that, right? That was
but for sure. I think maybe like the chicane curbs, it would have made a difference. You put no curbs or no, like there's curbs and no curbs. Like there's a video of AJ right behind me on one of the heat races. I'm smacking the curb. He's clipping the curb. It's about the same speed. It doesn't really make a huge difference, right? For me, it's just easier to hit the curb. But my point is, that's not really going to fix that. You're never going to pass there anyways if there's no curbs. But I think one of the biggest things we have to look at is how do we make a couple corners? Doesn't have to be the whole racetrack. A couple corners wide enough that for shifter racing, even if you are a little bit faster, you could still have a guy launch you with a draft and pass you at the end of the straight. And for me, if we're going back to the Rio, that's one of the things. Fix turn one and make it back to 2014 Rio, which was amazing. Like AJ, I remember AJ, I think, raced KZ that year, finished fifth.
Yep.
I remember he came from the field. He was passing people a lot of places, not even at the end of the straight, because it also had, like, after the straight, I remember it was a hairpin, right, at the end of the straight, and then you'd go straight to another hairpin that was wide as hell. It was super duper wide. And there's the two places you could pass in the shifter, like, quite easily. Like, now we go from a huge straight to a very tight turn one to a chicane to another fast right left that you're never going to pass anyone through there, right? The only two places you could really pass at this racetrack was turn 7, the right-hander, and then after the tight first gear hairpin, going onto the straight. And then obviously if you had a really, really good run at the end of the straight, but that was to the fast guys, it was going to be really hard to do that. So,
Makes sense.
You fix turn 1, you fix turn 2, and then you make it interesting. Like, take the bumpers away, fix turn 1, fix turn 2, let us race. That would be sick, in my opinion.
The track layout back then, the turn 1, turn 2 is more like Indiana, where we go Indy backwards. And if you defend into turn 1, you're going to get passed into turn 2 because you lose too much time with the back-to-back straightaways. Where this, we just drive in extra deep into turn 1 because the runoff doesn't matter because we have the chicane coming so soon.
I was going to say
Agreed.
that, like, not only when you widen those corners, it would give you more space to not get tripped up behind the guy popping first, blocking low, right? Like, you have that extra space to go wide coming in, so you can wait a little bit longer and get on the power even sooner if you can kind of make that apex even later, in theory, right? Like, if we're so tight, you could only go so much wider than the guy that was low lining. But if a guy were to low line some of those old hairpins the way you describe it, crossing him over, even if you didn't get clear, right, you just get him side by side, pinch him down, and the battle can start if it's a pack too. I would think. AJ?
I think it comes down to turn 1 this year. It was wider than you could ever want it down the straightaway into turn 1, and we weren't even entering on the outside of the track. But the problem was it tightened up on the X of the track, where it needed to be wide on the X of the track as well. You widen it up on the X of the track. Now all of a sudden you can get on the gas early, open your hands early, get the run out of the corner, where now it's really tight in the exit. So we have to hold a tight line off the exit, which means we have to stop the cart, which means it makes us drive it a certain way. I think it really comes down to just widening the exit of that corner, maybe changing the whole kink into it a little bit, redesign that a little bit, but more so just wide on the entry, yes, but you can't go wide on the entry and tight on the exit. Or we're going to stop the cart.
Yeah.
No, and that was the same in turn 7.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, got narrow on the exit.
Super narrow on the exit.
Yeah, because we saw a good amount of wrecks there. So, interesting. I like having you guys on again. You guys are the ones in the seats, right, front of the field, and you guys know what we want to do, of making sure that our races is good, because that's how we both attract guys into the class, and that's how we continue to get guys to buy shifter carts to run locally, because they see you guys doing your thing at the top level and being like, man, that's badass. That's what I want to do back home. So, again, thanks first of all for that. Now let's go to 2023. I know, Danny, you said Winter Series, it looks like Pro Tour maybe, PKS, adding the KZ class. How stoked are you guys for that? Kyle, for Euro on the West Coast, you got Challenge of the Americas coming in the winter, right? Is that where you're set to go, and then maybe a Pro Tour campaign?
We're probably not going to run the challenge this winter. I'll probably work at the first 2 rounds with Gary, maybe do some testing on Thursday with the KZ and the MG, and then we'll go for the Pro Tour.
Cool. So, but then for AJ and Danny, more Eastern Coast based guys and operations that run a lot of the Eastern Coast series, look into the USPKS stuff. Has that crossed your guys' mind? Have you guys started talking about that yet? Danny, you first.
Yeah, the schedule, I have the schedule. I could do Orlando. I could do all the rounds but 2. So it kind of takes a championship away for me. Let's say if I was going to fight for a championship. So I don't know what Mike's going to decide. I think I'd rather work those in USBKs. I really do like working with the juniors. So for sure, we're going to have a lot of juniors for USBKs. So I'd rather work the USBKs. I'm not a huge fan of NOLA, the way SCUSA runs it. I like the other way better. But I do want to race. I do want to stay in shape. Nothing keeps you in shape like karting. So I definitely want to do a full championship. And I think we now have a good enough package to fight AJ and GFC guys, Kyle, and obviously PSL. I think we do. It's hard for me to make the weight every single weekend. I made it for Supernats like I always do for Supernats because I know that's my biggest chance to win a big race just because of the conditions and everything. But for sure, if I do it, I'll do it right, lose the weight. But yeah, it looks amazing. I hope there's a lot of people. But I do believe still that USPKS will have to test out their waters first. And I think Pro Tour will still be a little bit bigger this year. And depending how Pro Tour does and seeing how USPKS does with the KZ, maybe in 2024, USPKS will be a little bit bigger. But I do believe Pro Tour will be a little bit bigger still for KZ this first year.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of momentum. AJ, what do you are looking at as you look to races to work, races to be around outside of your 9 to 5 and regular duties?
I think we're gonna start with the Winter Series this year. So rematch with Danny down there. These guys sound like they're pretty lame next year. Looks like I'll be racing by myself. But I think probably Winter Tour. We're debated trying to get a West Coast presence, maybe fly out for a challenge race, just to get the card out to the West Coast. And then I think the USPKS is going to be a good thing for the shifter card. I think we're probably going to bring magic out to that with a good couple of drivers. And then other than that, I'll just be out at all like the Stars races, all the local GoPros, and doing all that, working on the side.
Well, it spreads you guys out a little bit. Obviously, Vegas is the big show that we look towards next year, which is why it dominates this talk a little bit. But it's cool having you guys on, getting to talk about it, and obviously, seeing you guys staying around, it makes it easier to continue to build you guys up as we try to build up, the whole sport and the viewership. It helps having you guys stay around. So publicly, of course, so you guys know I get to talk to you a little bit at the racetrack, but we do appreciate making time, Danny, Kyle, especially you guys. It's harder for you to get around it more. Kyle from location and Danny for everything you're doing, but it is appreciated having you guys race with us, as much as we can. It makes it a lot more fun. And we've got the same guy coming back from last year to race this year. But it's cool that the class is up, right? I mean, it seems like even we always get a little bit hyped up after Supernats, then we're kind of relaxing for a week, but the momentum seems to be up. So last call out. Let's give it a last chance here. Danny, you led the charge last time you were on the show. So what's your message to everyone about getting in a gearbox kart for 2023, man?
No, I think you guys saw it. Everyone that, had the courage, and again, the word, had the cojones to move up, they did. Some people did well, some people didn't. Look at Hannah. She did. She was fantastic at Newcastle. Fantastic. She out-pooped me, destroyed me. And, it's fine. You're going to get drivers that are good, drivers that are not good. I think you guys all have to leave your comfort zone and find something new. I'm racing cars now and I have very limited experience, and it all thanks to shifter. I could jump in a car and be quick because of a shifter. Everything feels slow. I'm going 185 miles an hour in a car and it feels slow because I get in a shifter and it feels 60,000 times faster. I have my friend Logan Sargent, wanting to, race F1 next year. He's wanting to test in KZ this winter with me because he says it's the only thing that feels close enough to an F1 car. And that's not lying. That's true words. So, stop driving X30, stop hitting the ref limiter in the middle of the straightaway, and come drive a real go-kart.
That's a hell of a quote to end it off on here. AJ, Kyle, can you guys back that up with anything else? AJ, final call out?
Oh, man, that's always a tough man to follow there, on the track and off, apparently. I would say, yeah, like you said, I've gotten into a couple cars when I've gotten the chance. The F4 car felt like a Briggs kart. A GT car, it doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. The only thing that's the fastest and the best way to quicken your reflexes and become the best driver is in the gearbox. It's where you're the busiest. It's where all the work happens. It's where the
Kyle.
driving happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it. Where the driving happens. Kyle, what do you
Yeah.
got out west? Riley, your guys up.
The racing might not look as cool, but it is so much more fun to drive that the lack of passing still makes the race substantially more exciting than out there in a tag.
Quick, short, to the point. I like it. Boys, thanks again for coming on. AJ, Danny, Kyle, we appreciate it. We're going to have you guys on a lot more. We've got a lot of content with all you guys, man. But we appreciate you boys coming on the show here tonight. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
See
you
you.
guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
See you guys
Thanks.
soon.
Yeah, thank you guys, everyone. Again, thank you guys for coming back for KC Happy Hour. We've got some more star-studded guests that we're going to bring in over the next few weeks. You guys can hold me to it. I'm planning on getting our schedule done by next Tuesday. So hopefully we can drop that with a couple cool announcement posts of where we will be. I mentioned that on the last show right before we went off the air, it won't include Daytona Kart Week. We had a couple questions about that. That will be streamed, though. So good news for you karters. Pit Road TV is set to stream both, not for the first time, not just the dirt side, but the sprint side too, which is cool. And I don't know. I don't really get to compete a whole lot against other live streamers in the U.S. So I'm a little excited to see what those guys can do and see how we can try and beat them. But that's the only competition I get. So we'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be back with more throughout the month. We got some giveaways coming for you KC Premium members here in the next few weeks. Some of you guys have already bought some stuff on the store. Might be doing a couple surprise refunds for our KC Premium members as a thank you for the year. Yeah, the run to Christmas. And then right after that, we get 2023 started. But a good little show to give you guys some more names to faces here with Kyle Wick joining us for the first time. TJ Koyen will be back for some more. And we got some cool stuff lined up. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you guys next week.